Well, the Obama administration releasing a steady stream of detainees as the president pushes to close the detention camp at Guantanamo Bay. And it's raising security concerns about their activities after they get out. Now, as we told you earlier, the U.S. government now offering a $5 million reward for a top al-Qaeda leader who was released from Gitmo back in 2006. Now, Lieutenant Colonel Bill Cowan is a Fox News military analyst. Nice to see you, Colonel.
Nice to be with you, Leah. Thank you.
So this past August, this former detainee called on Muslims to wage war against the United States.
Yeah, this is the problem. I mean, he represents the kind of problem we have with many of the detainees. This administration's Director of National Intelligence, General Clapper's most recent numbers were of the 620 detainees that have been released, and those numbers have changed just a little bit, as many as 180 are either directly involved in terrorism acts or suspected of involved in terrorism acts. So there's a large number of detainees floating around out there, former detainees floating around, who represent a real problem to the United States, to our allies, to our friends. And as a reminder, those still held in Guantanamo really represent the worst of the worst. So as we see these others being released, as we expect under this administration they will be, we can face more problems.
Okay, so now you mentioned the recidivism rate. Now the DNI puts out a report each year. Director of National Intelligence puts out a report each year. The latest numbers I actually saw as of July 15th, 2014, 107 of 620 transferred were confirmed to have re-engaged. Now, roughly a quarter of those actually are now dead, roughly a quarter back in custody, but that still leaves, half of those out there. It's not a high rate of recidivism, but it is concerning, right?
Well, absolutely, because it only takes one. It only takes one of those people out there, in conjunction with the many other terrorists around the world, to commit some kind of act against the United States. And of the Taliban 5 that we released for Bo Bergdahl, I'm led to believe at least 3 of them have indicated some kind of support already for ISIS, who many of us might consider to be a bigger problem than al-Qaeda. So no question, Leah, as these people are released, some of them are going to go back and try and lead normal lives. That's fine. It's not those that we're worried about. It's the guys that are going to return to terrorism and pose a threat to the United States.
Now, you've said that while he wasn't actually ever held at Guantanamo Bay, the current leader of ISIS actually was detained by the U.S., then eventually turned over to Iraq.
He was captured in Iraq by U.S. troops, ultimately, and he was interrogated by U.S. troops. He was turned over to the Iraqis, and then without the Iraqis letting us know, and this was a little bit before we left, they released him out, and he, of course, went immediately back to become the leader, as he is now, of ISIS. Started out as al-Qaeda in Iraq, moved over to Syria, and now the leader of ISIS. So we've had that guy in our possession at one time, and he, too, kind of represents this notion that you have people, you release people, and they go back to doing what they used to do.
Well, within hours of taking office, the president back in 2009 promised to close Guantanamo Bay. So the question is, as we track down people that we need to get back, where do they go?
Well, I mean, this is a real problem. I heard Chris Starwald say in the last hour, interviewed by you, that he saw some kind of linkage maybe between Cuba and between Guantanamo, opening relations with Cuba. And I think he may very well be right. We can't keep these guys forever. We wish that we could. I'm not sure what all of the alternatives are, but there are some of them that do need to go somewhere forever. And if we don't keep them in the United States, then we need to have partner nations over there, the Saudis, the Jordanians, the whomever, that will put these people away for life. If we aren't able to find those kinds of relationships, Leah, we're going to see problems with some of these people.
Okay, well, over the weekend, 4 more detainees were released. The Pentagon does say that they take precautions. How do you respond to that?
Well, the Pentagon's going to say what they have to say. They're under pressure from the White House to get people out of there. So I understand the Pentagon's position here. The Pentagon, like the rest of us, are hopeful that these people we release are going to be good people. But I'll go back to what I said a moment ago. The last ones remaining still at Gitmo are the worst of the worst. We let the better ones go already, the detainees. Some of them have already returned to violence and terrorism. So the Pentagon, they have to say what they have to say. They're certainly under a lot of pressure. They don't want to let all these guys go. But the White House is going to demand. I think this president wants to walk out of his office saying, hey, I did what I promised I was going to do. I closed Gitmo, and all those detainees we had down there are no longer a problem for us. But indeed, many of them will be.
All right. Well, just this past week, he's been added to the specially designated global terrorist list. That's Ibrahim al-Rubash. We will see what happens with that. Lieutenant Colonel Bill Cowan, thank you for joining us.